Welcome to NarrativeNook audio tales where enchanted stories come to life. If you enjoy our stories, please subscribe, like and share to support our channel. Enjoy listening. Archie and Benny had barely finished reading the discussion online when Estella arrived at their door, leaving them no time to even shout for joy. "Archie, Benny, Ms. Linda is here to give us a ride to school," she yelled as she rapped firmly on the door to get their attention. Estella might be staying with them, but Roxan worked long hours recently, which meant that the little girl didn't get to see her after waking up in the morning. Thus, Estella was dependent on the boys for companionship, eagerly looking forward to seeing them every morning. This morning, however, the boys were still upstairs even after Linda arrived. Hence, Estella graciously offered to go up there and fetch them. When Archie and Benny heard Estella's voice, they quickly closed the laptop, but they were unable to restrain the grins that were spreading across their faces. "Oh, why are you grinning?" Estella was confused, but that didn't stop her from grinning along with them. Benny patted her head like an adult and replied secretively, "I won't tell you. You'll find out soon, anyway. I can't believe Daddy released a statement saying we're his children. Does that mean we don't have to keep our identities a secret from him soon?" With that thought in mind, Benny turned to look at Archie expectantly. Archie was well aware of what Benny was thinking. Despite the broad smile on his face, he wasn't as naive as Benny and was certain about his guess. "It looks like we're right to change our minds about Daddy. He loves Mommy dearly. I can't believe he did that to protect Mommy." Linda drove the kids to the kindergarten. During break time, Benny dragged Archie to the restroom to avoid Estella. The two boys whispered in the male restroom, "Archie, how did Daddy find out about our identities?" Benny asked innocently. He assumed Lucian published that statement because the latter had discovered the truth about their identities. However, after asking that question, he realized that Archie didn't seem happy as he was. Rather, Archie seemed annoyed. Benny was baffled. Looking at his brother's foolishly innocent demeanor, Archie responded, "Daddy doesn't know that we're his children yet." Benny furrowed his brows. Seriously? But it must be Daddy who released that statement. If he doesn't know, then why did he say that? With that thought in mind, Benny turned to look at Archie expectantly. Archie told him solemnly, "Because of Mommy." Benny tilted his head in confusion. "If he doesn't explain our identities, the netizens will assume Mommy had us with another man. They will then insult her." Archie was indeed Lucian's biological son, for he understood his father's intentions like the back of his hand. By acknowledging us as his own, Daddy is making sure that Mommy will not be subjected to the malicious words of the online community. He is doing so to protect us all from any possible hurtful remarks. Benny listened with his eyes wide open. It was not until he listened to the explanation given by Archie that he finally understood the situation. He's right. Only we, Mommy, and Aunt Madeline know that we're Daddy's sons. If none of us say anything, Daddy will never find out. Daddy only did that to protect Mommy. Even so, the boys were satisfied. At least we can be sure that Daddy loves Mommy sincerely. They will end up together one day. I wonder if Mommy had seen the statement. Estella, on the other hand, was confused to see the boys beaming all day. The boys were exhilarated for nearly the whole day after seeing the announcement in the morning. When night fell, Roxan had just stepped into the house when Archie and Benny flung themselves at her in excitement. Mommy." She was slightly perplexed by their gleeful demeanor. "Oh, what's going on? Did something nice happen in the kindergarten?" As soon as she ended her sentence, she glanced at Estella and was puzzled. If something did happen in the kindergarten, why isn't Essie acting the same way as them? Upon detecting his mother's confusion, Archie said, "Didn't you see the news on the internet?" That confounded Roxan even further. "What news on the internet?" Excitedly, Benny added, Mr. Farwell claimed that we're his children, just like Essie." "Did I hear that right? Lucian said Archie and Benny are his children? How's that possible?" Roxan was stunned. He could tell his mother was befuddled, so he grabbed the laptop, clicked on a public forum, and showed it to her. Farewell Group's announcement was still trending at the top of the website. Roxanne clicked on the announcement and read its content. When she finished perusing the announcement, she widened her eyes in shock. Lucian really did say that. Are we really Mr. Farwell's children, Mommy? Benny feigned innocence as he stared at his mother, pretending he had no clue about his background. If Mommy says yes, then we'll be able to call him a daddy in the future. The little boy was over the moon at the thought of that possibility. Roxanne looked away, avoiding her son's gaze. There's a reason for him to say that. She was indirectly answering in the negative. Disappointment surfaced in Benny's eyes as he asked, if that's not the case, why did he say that? Her line of sight landed on the screen again. After seeing that announcement and the netizens' comments, I'm absolutely certain Lucian doesn't know the boy's actual background. Otherwise, he would have demanded an explanation from me, which he didn't. I have a pretty good guess as to why he said that, though. He just wanted to protect my reputation after seeing unsavory remarks about me. Still, I'm shocked he's willing to do this for my sake. Roxanne clicked on the announcement and read its content. Roxanne had to admit that when Benny asked her that question, she felt the urge to reveal the whole truth to him. However, this matter had stayed hidden as a secret for so many years that she was afraid to tell him the truth. She didn't know if the boys would blame her when they learned the truth. Also, she had no idea whether Lucian would reprimand her for selfishly keeping this a secret all these years. Okay then. Since his mother didn't want to talk about the matter, Benny sensibly changed the topic instead of pressing on. Mr. Farwell's saying that because he wants to help you, right? A wide, innocent smile returned to his face. When Roxanne met his eyes, she nodded while wearing a complicated expression, for she couldn't bear to disappoint the boy by shaking her head in denial again. His smile grew even more sincere. Mr. Farwell treats you well, Mommy. It will be so nice if he's our daddy. You should accept his proposal, Mommy. Roxanne was moved when she heard Benny's sincere words, and she began to waver. Lucian had already laid the groundwork. If Roxanne took the chance and told him the real identities of Archie and Benny, they could let things fall into place and be together. That way, they could also provide the 3 kids with a complete, happy family. Mommy, what are you guys talking about? Having been neglected by the trio for quite a while, Estella approached them unhappily. Roxanne snapped out of her thoughts at the girl's voice. She reached out and pulled Estella into her embrace, asking, Essie, do you want Daddy and I to live together? She seemed to be implying that she was ready to say yes to Lucian. Immediately, the 3 children's eyes lit up. Archie and Benny turned to Estella, who nodded firmly and answered in a childish voice, Yes. I want Daddy and you to be together. The look in Roxanne's eyes softened following Estella's words. Then, before Roxanne could suggest that they should just live together, the doorbell to the mansion sounded. Perhaps it was because she just read the announcement, Roxanne had a feeling it was Lucian who rang the doorbell. He did something like that to protect me. Of course he'll come and claim the credit. At that thought, Roxanne stood up and walked toward the door, her countenance looking a bit complex. She had made up her mind. If it was really Lucian at the door, then she would confess the 2 boys' identities and accept his proposal. With that resolve in mind, Roxanne felt somehow nervous when she opened the door. Yet the moment she saw the person standing before her, her face stiffened. The hopeful feeling she had was replaced with exasperation. Roxanne had yet to adjust her expression when the person at the door spoke first. It's late already. Are you not going to invite me inside, Miss Jarvis? Questioned Sonia contemptuously as she stood there and looked at Roxanne with arrogance. Coming back to her senses, Roxanne frowned and remained silent for a while before stepping aside. Sonia strode in unceremoniously. At the sight of the 3 children beside the couch, she shot Archie and Benny a disdainful look. Then, she stretched out her arms at Estella. Essie, come to Grandma." Wordlessly, Estella took a few steps backward and hid behind Archie and Benny. Meanwhile, the two boys couldn't help but feel dejected when they saw the way Sonia looked at them. Although Lucian had acknowledged them as his sons, it seemed like Sonia still couldn't accept them and even despised them. When Roxan came in after Sonia and saw the latter's attitude toward the boys, her face turned grim. "Mrs. Farwell, you can just talk to me if there is any problem." Turning to the children, Roxan instructed, "Hey Archie, Benny, bring Essie upstairs first." They nodded obediently and turned around to head for the stairs, but Sonia's voice echoed behind them just then. "Stop right there." Sonia glanced at Roxan coldly and stated, "I have nothing to say to you. I'm here to bring my granddaughter home." Raising her voice, Sonia went on, "Come here, Essie. I came all the way here at this time of the night just to fetch you. Don't make me sad." She refused to take no for an answer. Estella stopped in her tracks and turned back to look at Roxan and then at the scowling Sonia. Without a word, she moved to Roxan's side and grabbed the hem of the woman's shirt. In response, Roxan took Estella's hand in reassurance. She began to regret letting Sonia in. Originally, Sonia did not intend to cause trouble for Roxan at such an hour. Yet she did not expect her son to release such a shocking announcement on the internet, and she only found out while she was having dinner. Sonia was so incensed that she didn't even finish dinner. After throwing her cutleries in a rage, she set off and drove to Roxan's house. She was determined to make Lucian and Estella cut ties with Roxan as soon as possible. Now that Sonia saw how dependent Estella was on Roxan, her anger was further fueled. "Roxan Jarvis, give me back my granddaughter," as she uttered frostily as if Roxan had snatched Estella away from her. Sensing Estella's nervousness, Roxan gripped the former's hand to soothe her anxiety. Next, Roxan lifted her head to face the woman opposite her. If this had happened in the past, Roxan might not know how to respond to a demand like this. However, things were different now. She was Estella's mother, so she had the right to keep Estella by her side and the confidence to face the unreasonable Sonia. "If Essie is my daughter who was separated from me for years, it's only right that she stays by my side. What are you trying to do, Mrs. Farwell?" Roxan maintained eye contact with Sonia, showing no intention of backing down. Her words caused Sonia's expression to change. "So you're aware that you're Essie's mother? Then where were you all these years? It was the Farwell family who put in so much effort to raise her. What did you do? You proclaimed that you're her mother right after coming back and took her away from the Farwell family. Have you ever considered our feelings?" Sonia spoke as if she was doing this solely for the sake of Estella. Feeling a pang of guilt, Roxan looked down at Estella apologetically. The girl sensed her gaze and raised her head to flash Roxan a bright grin. She showed no signs of resentment toward Roxan as her eyes shone with a look of reliance. That made Roxan regain her confidence. She met Sonia's eyes firmly and uttered, "That's why I need to spend more time with Essie to make up for all those years I missed out on." The air of hostility around Sonia grew at that. Roxan continued calmly, "If, like what you said, you put in a lot of effort and raised Essie, then her bond with you won't change no matter how long she stays by my side. You don't have to worry about that. If you really want me to stop worrying, then give Essie back. Just because you're her mother doesn't mean I'll allow you to join the Farwell family," snapped Sonia with a steely look. As she said that, she even stepped forward in an attempt to grab Estella. Roxan stepped sideways and shielded Estella. With an icy expression, she voiced, "If that's the case, we should listen to Essie and respect her decision." She turned around and looked at Estella. "Essie, do you want to go back with Grandma?" Estella shook her head without a second thought. She had gone through so much to finally be with her mother. It was only natural that she did not want to part with Roxan. When Sonia saw how Estella rejected her without hesitating at all, her face turned grimmer than ever. She accused, "Who knows? Maybe you told her something while she was with you all this time." Immediately, Roxanne's countenance darkened instantly. Please watch your attitude toward the kids. They can understand what you're saying," she warned, a forbidding aura surrounding her. Sonia gazed at Roxanne, finding the latter different from usual. "She seems fiercer." Realizing that, Sonia scowled. How dare you talk to me like that? Do you really think you've become Lucian's wife just because he posted that statement on the internet today?" Roxanne responded curtly, "I never thought that way. I'm just telling you the truth. If you think my words are too harsh, why didn't you wonder if you've gone a little too far?" There was nothing wrong with her words, but her tone was sharp. Sonia's face contorted with anger, and she lowered her head to glance at Archie and Benny, who eyed her with hostile gazes. The boys truly hoped Sonia could accept them, but they were displeased to hear the way she talked about them. Moreover, it was obvious that Sonia was bullying Roxanne, all the more reason for them to glower at her. However, Sonia's anger only spiked further when she met the boys' gazes. Did I say something wrong? I really don't understand what's wrong with Lucian. How could he make an announcement saying these two are his?" Now that Sonia had directed her malice at them, both Archie and Benny's blood boiled, so much so that they almost pounced on her and attacked her. Regardless, their expressions only made Sonia dislike them more. How could these uneducated children be part of the Farwell family? Who knows? They might be products of your entanglement with another random man. The audacity of you to even attempt to make them heirs of the Farwell family? You're delusional. At that point, Roxanne had forgotten all about being polite. "Mrs. Farwell, Essie, Archie, and Benny are my children. Even if they don't get to live in the Farwell residence, I'll still provide them with a comfortable life. Don't worry. We don't want a single cent from the Farwell family." Sonia scoffed. Who do you think you are? What makes you think you can do that?" As soon as she finished, Benny piped up, "We don't want Mr. Farwell's money. If we need money, we can earn it on our own." However, Sonia felt as if she had heard a joke. These 6-year-old kids are so full of themselves. They're actually telling me they can earn money on their own. Ha! They're willing to say anything just to be accepted into the Farwell family. Sonia could not be bothered to argue with them, so she uttered coldly, "I applaud your courage and integrity for saying that. Since you've said so, you'd better not use Essie's name as an excuse to live with Lucian." In other words, she believed they would use Estella as their stepping stone to earn themselves a place in the Farwell family. Roxanne was so close to landing a tight slap on Sonia's face, but she put a lid on her anger. That was never my intention. And please stop assuming the worst of my children. If you don't plan to communicate properly, then please go home. We don't welcome people who can't talk politely." Sonia sneered, "I'm not here to communicate with you anyway. Sure, I can leave, but Essie has to come home with me." The tension between the two adults filled Estella with panic and fear. The moment she heard Sonia's words, her face turned red, and she said tearfully, I don't want to. I want to be with Mommy." Sonia's face purpled with rage. "You'll have a better mommy in the future." Still, Estella kept shaking her head. No. I just want Mommy." Roxanne's heart ached as she pulled the little girl into her embrace. If you want to take Essie away, then please give Lucian a call. I won't say anything if he agrees," she said to Sonia. It was Lucian who let Essie stay with me. So, if you want to take her away, you'll have to get his consent first," Roxanne emphasized without a change in her expression. The little girl in her embrace immediately chimed in, I'll do what Daddy says." As Sonia watched the mother and daughter duo presenting a united front, she felt her temples throb. After all, her son had already made such a statement. The answer she would get could not be more obvious if she made the call. Roxanne saying that because she has no plans to let me take my granddaughter away. Most importantly, my son is siding with her. Ugh. I can't do anything about it. After waiting for some time and seeing that Sonia didn't take any action, Roxan said, If you don't want to make the call, then please leave now. It's getting late, and the children are hungry. I don't have the energy to prepare another person's portion. With that, Roxan put Estella down and gestured for the boys to take Estella upstairs. Once the children had gone upstairs, Roxan said, do as you please then. Without waiting for Sonia's reply, Roxan marched into the kitchen, completely ignoring the former. Just like that, Sonia was left alone in the living room. Glaring at the figure busy cooking in the kitchen, Sonia took a deep breath and hissed a warning. Don't you dare think you can be a part of the Farwell family just because Lucian and Essie like you. It won't happen as long as I'm alive. Dream on. With that, she stormed out of the house in a huff. Roxan had her back facing Sonia the entire time. Though she looked calm on the outside, deep down, she was tense. When she heard Sonia leave, she breathed a sigh of relief inwardly. It was an ugly argument, but Sonia's appearance had reminded Roxan that it was still not time for her to reveal the truth just yet. Sonia's hostility toward the boys was obvious. Even when Lucian had already declared to the public that the boys were his, Sonia still regarded the announcement as fake news without even bothering to clarify. It was clear that she had never accepted Archie and Benny. Even worse, the two boys weren't even considered decent children in her eyes. That was all because of Roxan's sudden departure back then, which gave Sonia a bad first impression. With that thought in mind, Roxan felt incredibly apologetic. In fact, she began to regret not dealing with the situation properly. I should have been more humble. After all, I wanted her to accept the boys. Still, Roxan could not think of another way to deal with Sonia when the latter kept pushing them into a corner. Meanwhile, the children had been hanging out on the balcony the entire time. The second they saw Sonia's car leave, they ran downstairs and approached Roxan. Mommy, are you okay? Roxan recollected herself and sighed inwardly before forcing a smile and patting their heads. I'm all right. Did I give you guys a fright just now? However, the children shook their heads and said indignantly, nope. We're just frustrated. Archie and Benny then cast her a serious gaze. Should we want to protect you? Roxan was so moved that she pulled them into her arms. Thank you, darlings. Please don't take Grandma's words seriously, okay? You're all my precious darlings. Nodding obediently, they responded, we know. You're the best mommy on earth, too. The fact that they were so understanding made Roxan feel sorry for them and at the same time guilty. She could not resist hugging them tighter. Meanwhile, in the mansion on the outskirts, Aubrey, too, saw the discussion on the internet. Her hand that held the phone trembled with anger when she saw the statement made by Farwell Group. Aubrey could tell Lucian was basically informing the public of his relationship with Roxan. In fact, he was close to revealing their marriage certificate. At the same time, he was also responding to Roxan and Jack's scandal, announcing to the world that Roxan was his. Lucian never announced our engagement in the past, no matter how subservient I behaved. And now, that batch made him do it so easily? And what's with those two children? Aubrey did not believe they were Lucian's children, nor did she believe Lucian would acknowledge the identities of two illegitimate children just to protect Roxan's reputation. In the eyes of bystanders who were unaware of the truth, they might think that Lucian and Roxan shared a loving bond. However, those who knew them personally would think that Lucian had cheated on Aubrey. How could he do this? No matter what the possibility was, Aubrey refused to believe it. Instead, she took out her phone to call Frida for verification. Similarly, Frida was shocked when she learned about the truth from Jonathan and realized how important Roxan was to Lucian. Hence, Frida was even more determined to stay away from Aubrey. Before she could even come up with an idea, Aubrey called. Frida answered it reluctantly, hoping Aubrey was only calling to ask for money. If that was the case, Frida could still fork out some. However, she would be at a loss for what to do if Aubrey threatened her to harm Roxan. After reading Farwell Group's statement in the morning, there was no way Frida would foolishly offend Lucian by messing with Roxan again. Unfortunately, Aubrey still had dirt on Frida, and the latter had no right to say no to Aubrey. Frida was already uneasy before Aubrey even uttered a word. She even took the initiative to ask, "For how much more money do you need, Aubrey?" When she finished speaking, Aubrey's icy voice came through the phone speakers. What's with the news on the internet? Are the two children really Lucian's children?" Even though they were only talking on the phone, Frida could imagine Aubrey's furious expression from the latter's tone. She could also imagine Aubrey's reaction after she had given her answer. Hence, she gulped nervously as she racked her brain for a response that would not anger the person on the other end of the line. Before she could even think of an answer, Aubrey made a guess. "Oh, it's not true, isn't it?" Aubrey hissed. Frida's heart clenched. "Aubrey, please calm down." Regardless, Aubrey cut her off. How am I supposed to calm down? I'm going to lose my mind from jealousy. What's so great about that batch? How is she able to make Lucian go to such lengths for her?" Her words rendered Frida speechless. Nonetheless, Frida could only pray and hope she would not be implicated because of Aubrey's anger. Thankfully, Aubrey only spat out a few curses and ended the call. Frida sighed a breath of relief when she saw the phone screen darken. Meanwhile, the more Aubrey thought about it, the more frustrated she felt. She scrolled through the phone for some time. Suddenly, her eyes gleamed, and she dialed the number at the bottom of her contacts list. News about the Farwell family's 2 additional young heirs, who were given birth by Lucian's ex-wife, caused an uproar in Horrington. Of course, the journalists took action almost immediately. No one knew how they got the information, but they found and swarmed around Roxanne's research institute and mansion. Roxanne was still asleep when she received a call from Linda telling her not to leave the house that day. When Roxanne received that call, she was still in a daze. However, the moment she got out of bed and saw the crowd outside, she panicked. The crowd was clearly there because of Farwell Group's statement yesterday. Noticing her room's curtains were pulled open, the crowd downstairs hurriedly focused their cameras in the direction of her room window and began snapping pictures. Shocked, Roxanne hastily drew her curtains. At the same time, her phone rang again. She grabbed it to take a glance, only to see it was from an unknown number. Suspicious, she answered it. The person on the other end of the phone asked, "Is this Miss Jarvis? You and Mr. Farwell?" Before the caller could finish his sentence, Roxanne hung up with rage swelling in her heart. How on earth did they find my number and address? Are journalists so well informed these days? Just as Roxanne was feeling shocked and annoyed, Estella woke up in a daze. She was happy to see Roxanne still in the room. With a smile, she stretched out her arms and said, Mommy, I want a hug." Hence, Roxanne recollected herself and picked the girl up. As soon as she caught the latter's scent, she was instantly relieved of her frustration. Nonetheless, Estella seemed to sense Roxanne was in a bad mood. She caressed the latter's face with concern. "Mommy, what's wrong?" Smiling, Roxanne reassured, "It's nothing. Come on, let's get you washed up." Estella nodded and crawled into Roxanne's arms, curling up into a ball. The weight in Roxanne's arms helped her calm down completely. After all, she had to stay calm since the children were at home. If not, they might get a fright. When Roxanne finished helping Estella wash up, she opened the room door, wanting to go down to prepare breakfast. The moment she opened it, she saw Archie and Benny standing at the door. Archie looked up at his mother, his expression tense. Mommy, who are those people downstairs? Did Mrs. Farwell send them?" That was their first time seeing such a scene. Moreover, Sonia paid a visit yesterday. Naturally, they thought it was her doing. Roxanne patted their heads to reassure them. I don't think so. Anyway, you two better not go out today. I'll inform your teacher about this." It was impossible for the children to go out when such a crowd was encircling the house. The boys nodded. Their gazes were filled with wariness as they eyed the people outside who looked like they would barge in any time. In fact, the boys were already thinking of ways to protect Roxanne if they actually barged into the house. In the meantime, Meline had just returned and saw the journalists swarming outside Roxanne's house. She had been busy dealing with a major operation for the past few days and was unaware of the news that was spreading. The first thing that came to her mind when she saw the crowd was that a medical accident had happened. As a doctor herself, Meline knew how much fuss a medical accident could cause. At that thought, she hurriedly pulled out her phone to get to the bottom of it. Instead of finding news about her best friend being involved in a medical incident, she found the latter's scandals. Medeline's eyes went wide when she saw the announcement made by Farwell Group. What happened during the few days that I was away? Does Lucian know about Archie and Benny's true identities? After taking a look at her phone and the journalists crowded in front of her, she began to understand why the journalists had gotten so worked up. There are 2 new members in the Farwell family all of a sudden, so I can see why these journalists are freaking out. Honestly, even I'm a little shocked myself. Whatever tiredness Meline had was completely gone at that point. With a frown on her face, she quickly gave Roxanne a call. However, all she heard was a robotic voice that said, "The number you have dialed is currently busy. Please try again later." She tried calling a few more times, but the outcome was the same. Eventually, Meline put the phone aside in frustration and walked up to the crowd. She wanted to squeeze past the journalists and confront Roxanne about the situation, but she was no match for the journalists at all. After a few failed attempts that resulted in her nearly being stepped on, Meline gave up and returned to the car. I may not be able to see Roxanne right now, but I should at least be able to see Lucian. The fate of my godsons and my bestie are at stake here, so I absolutely need to get some answers. With that in mind, Meline floored the accelerator and sped away from the mansion gate. She got even angrier when she arrived at Farwell Group and saw no journalists outside the building. Farwell Group was the one who made that announcement, so shouldn't the journalists be coming after Lucian for answers instead? Why are they swarming Roxanne and her kids? Are journalists these days cowardly pieces of trash who pick on the weak and fear the strong? Meline was fuming when she stormed through the office building's entrance. She was about to go upstairs when the receptionist at the front desk stopped her. I'm sorry, but you will need to wait here if you don't have an appointment." The receptionist had a conflicted look on her face when she found out that Meline was here to see Lucian. It took Meline every ounce of willpower she had to keep herself from lashing out on the spot. After taking a deep breath to calm herself down, she asked, "It was Farwell Group that made that announcement online, right? You know who Roxanne Jarvis is, don't you? Well, I'm her best friend, and I'm here to speak to her ex-husband. Why would you need me to make an appointment for that?" The receptionist had nothing to say in response, but she didn't dare let Meline upstairs either. Tension was starting to rise between them as they continued staring each other down. Eventually, Caden showed up and helped get the receptionist out of that awkward situation. Meline had seen Lucian's assistant before, so she was able to recognize him instantly. Caden. As Caden was acting upon Lucian's orders to help Roxanne out at the time, all he did was pause in his tracks to glance at Meline. Who is this woman? She looks kind of familiar. Meline then ran up to him, grabbed him by the collar, and dragged him toward the elevator. Take me to Lucian right now." Caden was still trying to recall who Meline was, so her actions caught him completely off guard. By the time he snapped out of his dazed state, the elevator was already on its way up. Having recalled that Meline was Roxanne's best friend, Caden asked politely, "May I know the reason you would like to see Mr. Farwell, Ms. Xander?" To confront him about what happened to Roxanne, duh. Why else would I even want to see him? Meline replied angrily as she stormed out of the elevator. Not only did that scumbag hurt Roxanne badly in the past, but he also has the audacity to pester her after she returned from overseas. Caden was so intimidated by her that he simply kept quiet and followed behind her as she walked up to Lucian's office. Meline opened the door and barged right in without even knocking. Lucian had a gloomy look on his face as he stared at the screen of his computer. He was looking at a video of the journalists swarming Roxan's house and the research institute. Lucian did not expect his actions to cause Roxan so much trouble. He was snapped out of his train of thought when the door to his office opened all of a sudden. Lucian looked up at the door in displeasure. He was about to say something when Meline yelled, "Get over here, Lucian. You owe me an explanation for the announcement online." She then walked up to Lucian and slammed both hands down on his desk while glaring daggers at him. Lucian frowned slightly as he stared back at her in confusion. After taking a few seconds to recall that Meline was Roxan's best friend, he suppressed his anger and politely motioned for her to sit down. Please have a seat." Naturally, Meline was not in the mood to sit down at that moment. No, you explain this to me first. Since when have my godsons become your sons?" She actually meant to ask Lucian when he found out about their true identities and how he won Roxan's heart over. However, Lucian's response caught her off guard and left her speechless. They may not be my biological children, but it's only a matter of time before they address me as their father. I will treat them as my own, so you don't have to worry about a thing," he said patiently while massaging his aching forehead. Meline froze. What does he mean by that? Does he still not know Archie and Benny are actually his children? Then, what's with the announcement from Farwell Group? That was when Meline recalled the search results when she looked up Roxan's name online. Most of them were questioning Roxan's relationship with Jack and the true identities of Archie and Benny. Did Lucian make that announcement just to protect them? Meline felt slightly better at the thought of that, but she wasn't about to let Lucian off the hook that easily. What about the journalists gathered outside Roxan's house, then? What do you plan on doing about them? After all, Lucian was the reason those journalists were there. Instead of answering her question, Lucian simply shot Caden a glance in response. Caden had a conflicted look on his face as he said, I've already given the press a warning, but There was no way the media would sit around and do nothing after Farwell Group made such a shocking announcement. It was only natural that the journalists would be fighting to get a scoop. Nobody was willing to give up on that golden opportunity, and that mentality resulted in the crowd of journalists getting bigger and bigger over time. There was nothing Caden could do about it at that point. Meline and Lucian understood what he was trying to say even though he didn't finish his sentence. What will Roxan and the kids do? They can't just stay home forever," she exclaimed anxiously. "I'll go pick them up," Lucian replied with a grim expression as he stood up and grabbed his coat. After taking a moment to recover from their shock, Meline and Caden quickly stepped in front of him to stop him. "Those journalists just want an answer, be it from me or Roxan. They'll leave once they get it," Lucian said while staring at them with a straight face. Caden knew he couldn't let Lucian do that, but he didn't know how to talk the latter out of it, so he decided to let Meline do the talking. Do you really think an answer is all they want? Roxan is the main focus of this incident, so they'd still continue to pester her even if you showed up," Meline exclaimed. Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this story, please like and share so others can see it too. Also hit the subscription button and notification bell so you can be notified on our next release. Thank you for your support. God bless you.